Hi, Gary. Schönen guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Vielen Dank für diesen sehr freundlichen Willkommensapplaus. Gary, first things first. Let's talk about Games of Thrones. You are a huge fan. What was it like for you to be attending the world premiere of Season 5 at the Tower of London and especially being able to present it with Sky?
Well, we've sort of had a very close relationship with the Game of Thrones production team for a long time now, right since it started, and it's evolved into probably the most important television series in the world. And to work with those guys is really quite remarkable. They are so good at what they do, they understand their story so well, but it's become a big enterprise now. So for the world premiere, that was the most expensive party I've ever had to host.
But was it worth it? I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it certainly was. It was a really great event, and it really put us and our good friends at HBO on the map together at a world-class event to recognize a TV series in that way. I mean, it was I think finally people are starting to realize that the modern TV series is genuinely a work of art, and we should celebrate it accordingly.
Why would you say, next to it being a piece of art and basically the way that it has been written over the years, is it so successful all over the world, and why are you such a huge fan?
I think the genius of Game of Thrones is that it has perfected all of the things that we look for in a great series. And that is a long, complicated story full of peril, full of uncertainty, and full of mystery. And in parallel, the development of extraordinary characters, all of which cross over one another and interlink. So the characters evolve and develop, the story evolves and develops, and they all interconnect into these spectacular moments that become the high points in the season. It's all meticulously planned to the minute, but executed with genius.
I think the interesting bit about this kind of series is that it started out a long time ago without any stars basically being in the series. Would you say that this is, the future of television making and television writing, that you do not need stars in comparison to things like The Young Pope with Jude Law, that you just start out a series based on great content?
Now, that's a really good question. I mean, it's ironic that the world's most expensive TV series has no established stars in it. It's kicked off with a star. It had Sean Bean. I'll probably get this wrong, and I'll have a whole lot of Game of Thrones fans criticize me. But I think Sean Bean was executed in episode 3, I think. So it was the end of the star so early in the series, and it set the tone for the kind of surprises and the kind of unusual treatment that became the standard fare of the show. It's also ironic, I think, that not only did they choose to not populate the cast with stars, but they recruited almost an entirely English cast, apart from Tom and one other.
Tom Blaschier.
Yeah. We have two
and
wonderful
Kikili. She's in it as well.
Wonderful German actors in the series, but mostly English and mostly speaking with very English accents, which for the American market was also something very fresh and something new. So they had so much confidence in the project that they could take these chances, take these risks. And of course, the story is such that if any of the cast cause any trouble, they can be easily executed.
Gone with the wind, basically. As a man of content, would you say that there's a chance in the future that Sky Deutschland might be producing series such as Game of Thrones regarding the content and the size of the production with partners or without partners? Or do you think that is something that, will be always based in the American market?
Well, I'm always reluctant to say we're going to make another Game of Thrones. I think that's That's always very risky. I mean, the scale of a project like that is enormous. That show now has a full-time staff of 700 people, full-time. So it's a very big operation. But the answer to your question is, yes, of course, not only would Sky Deutschland want to produce high-end, high-quality series, but we have to. It's part of our mission. It's part of our future. It's part of the whole project, because I think that those kinds of shows will in fact be driving pay TV for a very long time into the future.
A couple of years ago, I think in 2012, you basically said that you will wait to produce content or series such as Game of Thrones or Babylon Berlin or The Young Pope. Why has the time come now? Why have you decided on making that next step? I mean, there are a lot of TV producers amongst us who have great ideas. Yeah. Why is this the perfect time?
Well, timing is always a really critical part of evolving these businesses. When we got involved in Sky in 2010, the company was in some serious difficulties, and we had to reorganize, restructure, and rebuild a lot of things. I didn't want to take us into spaces that we could not execute well. And this space, this high-end series space, is an expensive place to go. And I think the moment we started that journey, the expectation level would be so high. I remember we've been having conversations about this for a very long time. You know, with good friends like our friend Wolf Bauer from UFA, we've been having conversations about production for a long time. And it really is about timing. And we are very close now to becoming a serious player in original production.
So what kind of topics are you looking for? Because if you look at the German market in comparison to other European markets or the American market, there are certain kind of topics and certain kind of themes that do really well with the German audience. What do you focus on and what do you want to achieve?
Well, we need to establish a big point of difference from traditional TV. In fact, our mission is to shift ourselves so far away from the traditional TV model that people stop thinking about us as TV. And I'll explain what I mean in a moment. So we would always be looking for a story that has got a long story arc with multiple complex characters, where the characters and the story can evolve over time. So we're really not looking for TV movies or one-off films or procedural self-contained episodes. We're looking for long story arcs. We know the crime genre works very well here, but over time we're going to adventure into spaces outside the crime genre, as another point of differentiating ourselves. So there are lots of stories around. I checked this just yesterday. Between Italy, Germany, and the UK, we are now managing about 2,000 pitches a year in terms of incoming projects, whether it's from a producer, writer, talent. There are 2,000 which we need to filter down into a manageable number that we can then put development funding to. Have I got a technical problem? Okay.
Ich dachte, das war mein Bart, aber wunderbar. Das ist gut. Okay. Thank you.
So, so we filter that down, and we are still very new in combining the three skies. But over time, we will have one development budget, where if a great project emerges in Italy or Germany or the UK, then we can focus big resources on it if we think it's the right story and it has potential to work across our platforms.
Okay, so it needs to have the potential to work internationally. So you wouldn't produce a series that, you know, is German-based, German language, German actors?
No, not at all. not at all. We'll be doing both. So each market will need to produce what is required to keep driving the pay TV engine on a very local point of view. And of those projects, some of them will be suitable for international execution. And it's interesting how this is evolving. The Young Pope is a really interesting project that came to us from Paolo Sorrentino, who is an Oscar-winning director, who's visually one of the great thinkers in filmmaking. No great experience in television, and came to us with this idea through Italy, and both the German and the UK companies fell in love with this idea. We put development money in, then we brought in Canal Plus and HBO as co-production partners, and suddenly it's an international project with Jude Law in the cast. So some of these projects will be local and some will be international. It depends on the story, and it depends on how they develop.
Was it important to get Jude Law involved to get it off the ground? I mean, in comparison to something like House of Cards with Kevin Spacey to basically kickstart that kind of production?
No, we committed to it before Jude Law signed. We were confident that the story was so strong, and with Sorrentino directing, I knew it would attract great talent. I mean, when you read the script, I don't read a lot of scripts myself because I don't have time. I was just saying to Wolfram, I've got a pile of books alongside my bed that I'll probably never get to finish. But I just fell in love with the script. I mean, it's an extraordinary story, and I knew that visualizing how Sorrentino was going to make this thing, it's almost like, I really don't care if anybody watches it. This will really be art.
So a lot of challenges ahead for you when it comes to productions, but jumping from the present back to the past, to the 90s, you were one of the key persons, or basically people of interest, who brought Sky in Great Britain to the success story that it has now. Looking back, what were the challenges, would you say, on the paid TV market in Great Britain, and how did you overcome those problems, and how did you get around those challenges?
You know, it's interesting looking back at it, and we really don't talk about it a lot, but it was self-evident to us that it was going to work. In the late 1980s, suddenly technology made it possible to deliver multiple channels of television to a 60-centimetre satellite dish. That was such a tantalising idea that it was irresistible. And it's interesting that everybody said at the time, oh, it won't work because free TV is too good. I have heard that speech in every country I've worked in the world, all the way from Korea to Taiwan to Indonesia and in Germany. But it's just not true. If we execute well, if we offer something that the consumer perceives as value, if we differentiate and add value and come up with something fresh and new, people will pay for it. And one of the things that we do is we work really hard at understanding our customer. And it really isn't about ratings. It's about perception of value and perception of participating in something special, something different from what is already established.
So would you say it's an advantage to not look at the ratings, but know that basically each viewer could cancel their Sky?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I really discourage my people spending too much time looking at ratings because they are misleading. They don't fully reflect the way people behave. First of all the measurement systems are completely dysfunctional. And yet we rely on them for these multi-billion euro industries that are so sensitive to culture and design and great thinking and great creative. And yet the single biggest deciding factor is a bunch of numbers coming out of a computer that nobody believes. So it's quite peculiar. Not only that, but you know, our industry is evolving towards a mix of linear channel television and on-demand television. And we're leading that field. We spend a lot of time understanding that. So I encourage all of our people to stop thinking about channel brands and think about content brands. So I don't want anybody thinking that Sky Atlantic is a channel. I want people thinking that Sky Atlantic is an idea. And a channel is one part of that idea. And that all kinds of other activities and consumer participation are also part of that idea. So the combination of a dysfunctional measurement system and the fact that, you know, a new generation is changing the way video is consumed means that why the hell would we be looking at ratings every morning and using them to make creative decisions? It makes no sense at all.
Why would you say have the Germans had so many problems in regards to pay TV over such a long period of time? Because as you've been saying it, especially in Germany, people have been saying pay TV is dead. It's never going to be a success story.
Well, I think for a very long time, Premiere had a series of difficulties. The single most important one was a lack of continuity. There were ups and downs in management and ups and downs in strategy, ups and downs in technology, all kinds of problems. So it was never stable for long enough to really get traction. So all we really brought to the game in 2009 was stability. So we came in, we developed a very clear plan, and we're still working precisely to that plan. And
what is that plan?
Well, I politely put this to my staff, say, well done, we've now got 4.2 million subscribers, so we've got 32 million to go. And
good.
And I mean that. There is no reason why we can't continue to grow. Our plan is based on a content. You know, there are three pillars to what we do: content, innovation, and service, and they are completely interlinked. We can't separate them. They are totally interdependent. So the plan is based around advancing each of those three factors in such a way that we can consistently grow our subscriber base by between 400 and 500,000 years of subscribers per year for a very long period of time into the future. And we think that that is now a sustainable position.
With the experience on the English market, would you say there are chances to compare the two markets, the German market and back in the 90s, the English market?
Well, I keep seeing parallels. I mean, the one obvious parallel is how as I said, every country I go to, somehow the people think that their nationality has some peculiar chromosome in their DNA that makes them unique in the universe of being the only species to be allergic to pay television. I can tell you that all we've proven so far in Germany is such chromosome doesn't exist here. That's all we've proven, and now we've got to prove our value and worth to the German community. So there's that commonality, and we're growing in Germany as fast as we ever grew in the UK. So what everybody forgets, the UK story is now 26 years old.
And so, I think 12 million customers.
Yes.
Okay, so that's...
Yes. And it's evolved into a very big, sophisticated business that is now one of the leading providers of broadband, leading provider of fixed line telephony, And next year we will be in the quad play business, as we call it, where we will also offer mobile telephony as part of the package. So we're expanding beyond television into a multi-service communications company.
Would you say that the Germans are very dependent on linear TV?
Increasingly not. I remember when I first arrived in Germany in 2010, one of the scariest things I saw was a graph that showed that in the year 2009, 14 to 29-year-olds consumed more video on the internet than they did on TV. So the TV line was going like that, and the internet video line was going like that, and they crossed in 2009. And that was the signal that said, oh, we have got to get seriously into on-demand services. And that really kicked off the journey where Brian Sullivan brilliantly led the company into a sophisticated technology evolution. Technology in the home, technology on the iPad, mobile phones, and multiple devices, which he did so brilliantly. My job was relatively easy. I just had to figure out what's the right programming to put on that iPad. And, you know, we did our deal with HBO. So the metaphor that I kept using was, picture the 22-year-old watching True Detective on an iPad. If we can deliver that idea, the rest will follow. So it was identifying the right kind of content that fit not only the behavior, but also the generational aspirations of the people who were abandoning television. We talk about them a lot. They are lean forward, they are younger, they are tech savvy, they're affluent, they're smart, and they talk a lot on social media. So we were able to ignite a conversation with a whole generation that had gone straight from free TV to the internet and bypassed pay television. For pretty good reason, because there was nothing in pay television that was relevant to their lifestyle in both content and utility or usability. So it was really exciting. I mean, we were able to engage in a very exciting evolution of both technology and content in parallel. And now we're sort of leading the space. In fact, in Germany, we're doing things here in a much more sophisticated way than we are in the UK in some ways. So in the UK, we're having to catch up with Germany in some aspects of the on-demand space. We created a special division in my department nearly 3 years ago now called on-demand programming. And it was kind of radical at the time, and all of the guys working on the channels were terrified. It was like, oh my God, what does this mean? You know. Now it's part of the nature of our business. And those guys do some really clever work, identifying what are the unique features of on-demand video. What are the unique features of the user experience? What can we do that is special for these people that says, do you know what? Being part of Sky is kind of cool. That's what they think about all day. They're very young, very smart, and very ambitious.
On a more personal note, because listening to what you have to say about linear TV and its future, and especially the plans that Sky has, do you think it was a smart move that I signed a 3-year contract with the ZDF starting on the 1st of January in 2016?
No, listen, you're talking to somebody who's old enough to really believe in traditional TV. No, linear TV is going to be around for a very long time. Partly because I think, you know, all of our television is going to become more and more focused on behaving like a live event. And I think we'll do a lot more live event television so that we can engage social media into a real-time water cooler You know, a real-time, you can't afford to miss this moment. That's what linear TV is going to be good at. And I'll give you some statistics. I'm probably going to get into trouble for saying this, but we just recently did a fun thing with Game of Thrones. We did a 12-day pop-up channel. So we did a channel and it was just wall-to-wall Game of Thrones. We had a lot of fun doing it. And it had, Wolfram, interrupt me if I get this wrong. We had about 6.5 million interactions with that service, and 90% of it was linear. Even though all of those episodes were also available on demand. So there was this sense of event, this sense of participation, this sense of community around this linear thing that got people really excited. And it just reminded me that linear TV is going to be very successful as long as we can keep being smart about it.
Is that why you basically are producing the series Babylon Berlin with Tom Tykwer and the ARD? I mean, is that something, you know, this is a first, you know, that linear TV and pay TV are basically joining forces to produce a series. Is that something, is that a model for the future? I mean, is that something that you will be doing more and more?
I suspect so, although in fairness, this is an experiment for both ourselves and our friends at ARD. How it came about was we both loved the project, and it seemed crazy that we both couldn't afford it. So to cut a very long, complicated story short, we found a way to work together. And it was a very brave thing for ARD to do, I have to say. There were a lot of people who were nervous about it, were uncertain about how we would behave. And now we're at a point where the episodes are written, and we hope that we have cameras out of cases and shooting material before the end of this year. So, yes, it is an experiment for us. I'm very optimistic that it will work and that it could well become a model for future projects.
So it's, Tom Tykwer is involved. I think parts of it will be produced at Babelsberg Film Studios. Is that true?
I'm not sure.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
That's what I read. German actors will be in it. Will it be in English? I mean, is that something important that you have the international potential because it's based on a German story?
No, this is a really interesting part of the project. We are shooting it in German.
Okay.
We all believe that the story is so strong and that the quality of the production is so great that this thing will export all over the world. That's how strong it is. There are some interesting things happening in international television right now. We've just had a very interesting experience with a project called Gomorrah, which we made in Italy. All shot in Italian, very brave project. It was shot in the mafia neighborhoods of Naples. And it has this amazingly gritty, real look about it.
And it was very expensive, probably.
It was very expensive, but it's been sold in 100 countries.
Okay.
In Italian with subtitles. And we're now in production on season 2, 3 episodes of which are being shot in Germany. I can't tell you why.
Okay.
Because my life might be in danger.
Okay, don't do it then. It's really interesting because Brian Sullivan, for example, said, you know, talking about content, especially HBO, who have been sort of like the front runner when it comes to great series in the past decades. He said 83% of the content that is being produced by HBO is not successful. Basically, sort of keeping that in mind, that every series that you will be producing in the future is not going to be every second or every third series might be a huge hit. How risky is it basically to focus on the individual markets, and how important is it to have the chance to market it internationally?
Well, as I said before, I think each of our territories are going to be producing for their local market and for the international market. The international market is actually not essential for our success. We can afford to invest to produce quality content in each of the markets separately. We think by investing more money into the productions, we can elevate the stature of the product to the point where it can export. So we will do both. I mean, we will do local productions and we'll do international productions. We're looking at this in the UK, for example, right now. This year we have either on air or commissioned 30 series. That's like about 190 something episodes of original scripted production. But only a relatively small part of that will export. We've had great success with some of it, like Fortitude has been a great success. But the localness of a project is a really important part of this. I mean, our first co-production was a relatively modest production called 100 Code. And we've recently finished screening it. I can tell you that it beat House of Cards on Sky. And the big production this year from Sky in the UK, Fortitude, which cost maybe 7 or 8 times what 100 Code did, 100 Code beat it in Germany by 2 to 1. So it's really about tapping the culture and tapping the mindset of each of the local communities as closely as possible. The more local we can be, the more relevant we can be. The economics, of course, are much better if we can export and bring in co-production partners, but they're not essential necessarily to us making original programs.
So one of the main pillars of the success of Sky Deutschland in the future will be your own productions of series. The other will be sports. I mean, if you look at the rights to the Bundesliga, I think Sky Deutschland is paying 486 million euros per season. In the year 2016, this contract will be renegotiated, and I think it's fair to say that it will be a lot more expensive than it used to be, at least if you listen to what some of the team heads have to say. In what way will that influence sort of your plan to be able to produce your own content in the future?
Well, my mandate or my mission is to create enough impact with our entertainment content that football becomes an equal partner and not the lifeblood of the platform. So when we think about the future and the escalation of costs in almost everything we do, I mean, it's a perfectly natural part of the evolution of our business. We understand it pretty well. We can plan our cost escalations as a percentage of our revenues. We can plan that very carefully. The stronger we can get in the entertainment business, the more affordable is football.
How dangerous, if you look at, I mean, you have been the sole player in this market for a very long time, but now with Netflix, Amazon Instant Prime, in the international market, there are a couple of more platforms like Hulu. I think a lot of people looked at the prices that you were calling for the packages for Sky Deutschland in a different way, because you were raising the costs for the viewers. Why was it important for you to make that next step? Was it important to be able to buy football rights in the future, to be able to produce more in the future, or to basically stand out as a pay TV channel and VOD platform?
We position ourselves as being the premium player. So we've got current movies, original content, HBO, live football. That's premium stuff. Then there's the library guys. So naturally there's a price differential in that. And not just the cost, what it costs us to deliver those products and services, but also us trying to calculate what is the appropriate value to the customer. Where is the level at which the customer is comfortable? We're pretty confident that we've got that equation right. I mean, it's constantly changing, of course, and we review it almost every day. But our future planning seems to be pretty stable in terms of where that's going. We think we can continue to differentiate ourselves not only from free TV and prove that we are worth paying for, but also to prove that we're worth paying more for.
HBO is a very important partner for you, especially with the series, with the content. In the past, you've started to basically release content at the same time as it has been released on the American market. Why is that so important, and does that help in any way to fight piracy and downloading?
Well, yeah, there were two motivations that made us do this, and it actually dates back quite a long time ago. I remember shortly after we did the HBO deal, I remember saying to Brian, listen, after having launched Game of Thrones and Boardwalk Empire, I think we should be realistic and assume that HBO won't have a big hit for a while. I mean, nobody can keep churning out hits at that level. I was in Munich, and a couple of my colleagues were at the LA screenings, and they saw for the first time the pilot episode of The Newsroom. And they said it was the first time in the history of the screenings where the entire room full of cynical programming people stood up and applauded the episode. That this is a very important television show. Within a few days, the blogs in Germany were just lit up with kids trying to figure out where's the best place to get an illegal download of this show. I thought, God, how depressing is that? So to cut a long story short, we negotiated with HBO and we got permission from them to be able to upload the episode on our on-demand platforms 1 hour after the West Coast telecast, which turned out to be 8 a.m. Munich time. So 8 o'clock Monday morning, we would upload the episode of the new show. Now, what's happened is this has been so effective that we now get all of the shows in advance, and we're now allowed to release them simultaneously with New York. So our subscribers get to see these shows before HBO subscribers in California.
Good job.
So, but there are two reasons. So the piracy was one motivation, but the other motivation is, let me take you back to that conversation with the lean-forward, tech-savvy, talkative generation that we were trying to engage. It ignited a conversation with them immediately. They really got it. They really appreciated it. Even though it was delivered in English and probably challenging for a lot of people, but people who are crazy about that kind of content really became a part of our family from that moment on. So we now do that all the time.
What about binge watching? Because that's another very important thing, not only to upload one episode, but a whole season that people can basically watch every episode back to back.
We're experimenting with that. With House of Cards, we put the whole season up simultaneously with Netflix in the US. In fact, I think we did it half a day ahead of them last year, but anyway, don't tell them.
Okay.
Anyway, but the only reason we did that was because of piracy issues. We just felt that, you know, if consumers feel that they can get a very high resolution, uninterrupted, high quality service delivery That's a lot better than trying to get a streaming download from some dodgy illegal website. And that's proven to be the case. There's a very famous case with season 3 of Game of Thrones, episode 1 of that show, was the most illegally downloaded piece of video in history. Normally, Germany would be in the top 3 or 4 in the world in the BitTorrent rankings. Didn't even make the top 20 in that case. And HBO believed that because we made the shows available so conveniently, that it just prevented a lot of people from going to BitTorrent. So that tells you 2 things. One, it's pretty exciting that when you offer a service, people will respond. But it also tells you some of our subscribers use BitTorrent.
A couple of years ago, you said that it is a little bit arrogant to basically tell viewers when to see what on TV.
Yes.
If you look at, for example, a crime series like Tatort, last night 13 million Germans tuned in and watched Jan-Josef Liefers and Axel Prahl in Tatort. How are you trying to basically change that and give people the chance to see the content that they want to see whenever they want to see it?
Well, we don't need to change it. We just need to make alternatives available. And over time, it will change. We don't need to change it. Although, I have to say, ever since I got here, Wolfram will support this. I've always been highly amused by the fact that we have 207 television channels in this country, all of whom put their best show on at exactly the same time. You see, in my world, that's really terrible customer service. I mean, we just wouldn't do that. So we just genuinely believe in the liberty of people choosing what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, where they want to watch it, and whatever device they want to use to watch it. So the idea of everybody putting their best product head to head with everybody else's best product seems to me to be self-defeating. But I've been spectacularly unsuccessful at persuading anybody otherwise.
As an Australian who has been working all over the world on TV, and you just mentioned one of the German sort of Eigenheiten, as we would say, what else seems to be weird about the German TV market that you see from an outside position and basically say, wow, the Germans do not only drink beer and drive fast cars, they have a really weird way of watching TV?
No, I don't think it's weird at all. I mean, you mentioned Tatort. I mean, Tatort is a brilliant piece of television. I mean, and it's sustained over a very long period of time. There's a lot of great television. In fact, we just recently gathered up, I think, 16 shows that we sent on video and forced all my colleagues in the UK to watch them. And they were all quite surprised at the diversity and quality of German television. So, yeah, there is a lot of good television in Germany. I can't think of anything that I think is peculiar, apart from 8:15. That is a peculiarity that I find interesting.
I have to disagree in some regards, because I think Tatort, at the moment, they can basically show any kind of Tatort and people will tune in. I think that the content sometimes is really horrible, but that's my personal opinion. I think that the interesting bit about
anything that establishes a habit that strong is a pretty good product.
So that's the water cooler moment that you're looking for.
Yeah, people tune in to watch that event, and it's the one thing that sustains the 8:15 phenomenon.
Okay. What kind of content are you watching on TV, and how do you watch TV, if you are?
I don't get time to watch a lot of linear TV, so I have to confess I watch a lot of TV programs on my iPad, partly because I'm traveling so much. But I'm a self-confessed series junkie. I love The new generation of series is, to me, it's genuinely a whole new generation of creativity that the industry so badly needed, I think.
If you look at series like Game of Thrones, True Detectives, for example, Downton Abbey, they seem to take risks in a sense that they focus on one, for example, Downton Abbey, on one family and their storyline. True Detectives, very brutal, sometimes philosophical kind of conversation that they're having, Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. Is that the way television needs to be, taking risks? Because this is a huge point of discussion in Germany, that sometimes producers feel that German TV stations are not taking enough risks.
Look, people sometimes use what we're doing as a criticism of where free TV is. The reason we're doing what we're doing is in order to differentiate ourselves from free TV. We are almost like the antithesis of Big Brother. That's why, you know, the last 7 minutes of the final episode of True Detective with Matthew McConaughey in the car park of the hospital, I think was some of the finest drama I've ever seen. Quite intelligent, quite complicated, quite difficult to follow. Unless you'd watched the whole series, it probably didn't make sense. That's the kind of stuff that is very difficult to do in the free TV world. But that's why we do it, as a point of differentiation. Now, over time, we'll experiment with other categories, but that high-quality, long story arc series space is a perfect place for us because it's something that free TV finds difficult to do. We love it and we're able to invest in it, and we think it's engaging a younger generation, that lean-forward, tech-savvy generation, in a conversation that we could not have in any other way.
What would you say is the message to producers in Germany regarding the content that they should hand in to you as someone who's looking for content to produce?
Well, I think we prefer somewhere between 8 and 10 episodes. We also prefer a story that has sustainability across 2 seasons. So what we like to see is a story outline for season 1 and a very rough sketch about where season 2 might go. So we love the idea of continuity and longevity. The story needs to have a long arc right through to episode 10. And it needs to be different. It needs to say something. It needs to have a point of view. And the people who deliver it really need to be passionate. I mean, we sometimes see projects that have merit, but the people who deliver it say, oh, here's another one. This is okay too. That's going nowhere. We like to see people who are really passionate about the thing, that we know they own the whole concept and they understand all the characters and they care about the characters. So we know that the project is in good hands. But it needs to be different, but the people presenting it need to be passionate about it.
Next to fictional content, is there a chance of shows on Sky Deutschland in the future, something like Harald Schmidt that you guys did with Harald Schmidt, or is that something that you're not going to be focusing on?
I think in the short term, our focus is going to be primarily on drama now. But longer term, I think we'll be in many more genres and categories. But it's hard to see beyond like a 2 or 3 year time frame currently from a creative point of view. With an open mind on pretty much everything, but we know that drama delivers for us. So that's where we're currently focused.
And last but not least, where do you see linear TV and pay TV in 5 years?
I don't think they'll be very different in 5 years from now. Although 5 years is a long time, isn't it? Every time I say the business is stabilised, I'm proven wrong. I think that we can see some interesting technologies coming along. We're very active in all the obvious ones. As you mentioned earlier, 3D, obviously HD is now the standard. We're investing reasonably heavily in 4K and investing in virtual reality. There are some technological advances going on, but none of them really impact the creative process. The creative process really hasn't changed for many years. So the story is at the heart of what we do. And the story is what the customer will pay for.
Thank you. Meine Damen und Herren, Gary Davey. Thank you so much. Gary. Cheers. Thank you.